Good day. Welcome to the Corey Morgan Show. Good to see you in the comments scroll there, Paradoxy and the others. This is a live show, so yeah, if you're watching, throw your comments in there, questions, things like that. I see them all. I don't necessarily read them all out, but I appreciate knowing there's really live people interacting on the other side, and sometimes it really helps the conversation. Just stay civil with each other, and yeah, spend a little less than an hour with us here. We get some good informative stuff, get some ranting in, and take a break from the smoke and heat. Good to see you others checking in, Kenzie and Jake and the rest of you there. I got a good show coming up. I like to think they're all good. Some are better than others, but I don't think there's really any bad ones, except that one time we had tech issues. Either way, I got Dr. Sylvain Charlebois coming on in a little while as a guest. He's going to talk about the new grocery code of conduct. People might know him as the food professor. He's an economist. He covers all things food, whether it's agricultural producers, grocers, and everything else. It's a specialized area, but it's been a big news area, and he's very outspoken. He's always fun to talk to. He's been on the show before, and he'll kind of break down what that's all about for us there. As well, of course, we'll have our news check-ins and some other things to cover as we get along. So let's get to the subject of what I want to talk about today. And it's funny, it ties in a little more with somebody who has released a recent documentary. And it's a hard subject, but it's one that we're seeing constantly. Headlines saying, the hospitals, they're overwhelmed. Emergency rooms are overwhelmed. People can't get treatment. People can't get in. People are dying in the hallways. It's the same in every province. The hospitals and emergency rooms, they're overwhelmed, and it's across the country. And that's because of Canada's socialized healthcare monopoly system. Access to care in a timely manner is always going to be a problem until the entire system is reformed. In the meantime, though, there are things that can be done to ease the pressure in the hospitals without digging into and amending the Canada Health Act. Things to do on the way to real reforms. Now, for myself, I've shared a bit of that on here. I've had a pretty rough year as far as the health of my family members go. And it's led to me having spent more time in hospital emergency rooms in 1 year than I've spent my entire life. Things just seem to happen in waves. That's life. At least it certainly gave me a perspective on things, though. And in multiple hospitals, the emergency rooms all look the same. They're overcrowded with suffering people, while exhausted, harried staff try to keep up. I was at the Foothills Hospital last month. It's a Calgary one, and it's huge because an elderly family member had a stroke. And the scene was like something from the movies. The waiting area was packed with people in the emergency area. And once you got into the treatment area, there were literally people suffering and lined up on gurneys in the hallways waiting for help. It's what you'd expect to see after a major disaster or something, but this was just a typical afternoon. And to take some of the pressure from those hospitals, we have to start identifying who really needs to be there and who doesn't. Because Canada's system packs so many services into hospitals, they become overwhelmed because they're trying to be everything to everybody rather than the acute care centers they're supposed to be. I want to start with mental health services. They have to be decoupled from general hospitals. I mean, due to decades of the misplaced movement of deinstitutionalization, we have thousands of people who should be receiving long-term mental health care, and they're on the streets quite often. They're in no condition to manage themselves in this naive community living system we've set up. And they either end up in the streets, in jail, dead, or in hospitals. If somebody needs mental health treatment, I mean, if you haven't had to encounter it, you never really think of it until the time comes. But if you hit a crisis, what happens? Well, hospitals, they're the only entry point for mental health care. So if somebody's had a mental health, a breakdown or an episode, they're forced to head to an emergency room to await help. That's assuming somebody will take them there. Last year, my father had a mental collapse. He was paranoid, delusional, prone to wandering. Couldn't just leave him. He couldn't help himself. It came on suddenly, and for his safety, we needed to get him into care. It took rotating shifts of family members to stay with him in the emergency room for 23 hours before he was admitted. Then he was medicated, placed on a gurney in a hallway for 2 days before they could get a bed in the psychiatric unit. He spent 40 days in that unit. It's a sparsely equipped wing in the hospital. Staff were excellent, and they did what they could with him, and with the rest of the challenging patients, of course, within that unit. But it was clear that the space is transitional and couldn't offer long-term care, which most of the people there actually needed. They were committed there. They usually end up getting discharged, though, within days. And if they don't have family to help, they often end up on the streets. Even if they do have family to help out, sometimes they end up in the streets. Most mentally ill people who go to the hospital, they never even get to the psychiatric ward. They're given a prescription and a brochure listing community supports and, hope that things work well for you. Good luck. And it's not that the doctors are heartless. They just have nowhere else to put people. It's unfair, expensive, and ineffective pushing psychiatric patients through general hospitals. The doctor who can set a broken arm likely isn't well trained to deal with a schizophrenic, but that's what they're tasked with. For people awaiting care for injuries, it's not pleasant spending hours in a waiting room with a person who's melting down with a bipolar disorder. An emergency room setting, of course, isn't very comfortable for a person suffering from a mental health issue either. We need mental health facilities separate from general hospitals, both for the intake and the long-term care. Yes, we need to expand our psychiatric institutions rather than closing them as we have been. And I know we don't like to think of having people confined, but I assure you it's more humane than having them in jail, homeless shelters, or in the general hospitals. And of course, it's going to take pressure away from those emergency rooms. Likewise, we need fast and separate inpatient care for addicts. They're showing up in emergency rooms and they can't be effectively treated there, but they don't know where else to go. Hospitals are often being used as well as nursing homes when seniors without family advocates find themselves in need of care but hadn't planned for long-term care homes. It's a very expensive and unpleasant way for a senior to spend their final years. And then, again, we can look into things, expand options for practical nurses and general practitioners so we can reduce these emergency room loads. Many people with minor ailments head to the emergency rooms when they could be better treated elsewhere, but they don't necessarily know where to go. Creating new facilities and options, it sounds expensive, but let's not pretend we aren't already paying for it. The addicted, the mentally unsound, they're already in our facilities, but they aren't getting the best treatment we could. Dedicated long-term facilities can house and treat people with mental health, addiction, and age-related issues much more effectively and at a lower cost than general hospitals can. We don't need to reinvent the wheel to take the pressure from our emergency rooms. We just need to rethink the centralized model that packs everybody into one place for treatment. It just doesn't work. So, and I'm going to go a little further. It ties in. It was coincidental. So this documentary just got released this morning. And Canada's healthcare system, it's broken. Thousands are dying before getting the care they needed. Millions are on waiting lists, and it's getting worse. So how do we fix it? Secondstreet.org has a brand new documentary out called Health Reform Now, and it has the answers. Check them out. Head to healthreformnow.ca, and you can watch the entire documentary for free. healthreformnow.ca. And yeah, they talk in that documentary. I just watched it, as I said this morning, and it covers a lot more into the whole systematic change that we have to make, as opposed to, the more immediate things I was talking about with changing who goes into the hospitals. It's a very good documentary. We're going to speak to them next week. Actually, they're going to be on as a guest as well. Was this Paradoxy saying Smith said a revived OD is about 6,000 per OD? I could believe it, with people who are addicted. I noticed another commenter mentioning that, Smith is separating AHS from mental health. That's in the administration. So Alberta Health Services had everything stuffed together, and she's breaking it up into different categories. So it's good. It'll help with reforms and so on. But I'm talking about actually we've got to split up into separate facilities. When this person's got an addiction issue, there should be a space available for them to get treatment right away outside of a general hospital. Likewise, if they have a mental health issue, they shouldn't be sitting in a general hospital waiting room. They should be at a mental health facility. So, we're moving in the right direction, and hopefully that's where Premier Smith's going to go. All right, well, let's get on. I've already been eating up time a lot, and get on to Jen Hodgson. She's going to be checking in with some news updates on what else is going on out there in the big bad world. How's it going, Jen?
Hey, Corey, going pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I like the heat. So what do we got?
Okay, so we have the Paris Olympics coming up this week. So we have a couple stories already coming out of there. This morning, in the early hours, it was announced that Canada's female soccer team was actually caught spying on the New Zealand team. So by sending drones over their practice area, the New Zealand team actually reported that they saw these drones from an unauthorized Canadian team representative, filed a formal complaint with the International Olympic Committee, and now there's going to be an investigation. The Canadian Olympic team made an apology, and they called their own apology, I think, heartfelt. So I don't know, you can take that for what it is, but this is how we've started off the Olympic Games representing Canada. So that is pretty disappointing to see. Now, with the torch going around, so this year's 2024 Paris Olympics has a big emphasis on diversity, of course, right? So there have actually been 3 drag queens that have relayed the Olympic torch. So these are prominent drag queens in the French media world and also the RuPaul drag queen show. So there's a number of these drag queen shows that these performers are part of, and so they've been much celebrated by those from the left perspective, like the mayor of Paris, for example, but has really garnered a lot of widespread criticism online. So that's what we have for the Olympics. Keeping in that continental zone, though, in the UK, top on our website right now is a video of UK police really stomping on the head of some Muslim men, kicking them in the head. And the men were already detained on the floor. And so that is also a deeply concerning video that we have up on our page right now. Continuing with the international relations theme, we have our Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, who went to visit China late last week. She was actually summoned by her counterpart in Beijing to discuss the relationships between the two countries. And when she came back, she told the Globe and Mail that she really was very firm with her Chinese counterpart. However, she did admit that no inroads were really made. They didn't really make any progress. Now, at the same time, Chinese media reporting on Weixin, which is WeChat, QQ, is actually reporting that Jolie was severely reprimanded and given a stern talking to by Beijing because of what they referred to as dirty Westerner political tricks. So Jolie has one story coming back, but then we see more than one story in the Chinese media. And of course, we know that the Chinese media is run by the Chinese state. So this is the general perspective that China is wanting to show its citizens of Canada. So it actually makes Canada look pretty weak from that foreign relations perspective. And so I guess time will tell how things will transpire between those two countries, especially as Canada is looking at the whole foreign interference scandal and still in the wake. Let's not forget, it was only last month in June, though it might seem like a long time ago now, that spies were revealed on Parliament Hill. So there is a lot to that meeting and not too much was disclosed to the public, but we do have that perspective from China. And finally, Corey, it's quite smoky here in Calgary. So up in Jasper, which isn't too far away, there have been 25,000 people evacuated. And it's a small town, a small region. There's actually only 10,000 or so residents and 1,500 visitors that were all evacuated from that area. So I'd want to encourage our listeners and viewers to stay tuned. Jonathan Bradley, who is our current Edmonton reporter, is going to be following that closely and will be giving us an update soon.
Great. Well, thank you for all those updates. Yeah, let's really hope for the best for those folks out in Jasper. If for people not familiar with the area, it was pretty terrifying. It's a mountain town. There's two ways in and out, and one of them was blocked by fire. So everybody had to make their way to the west to get around there, and then north and south. I can't imagine. It's got to be terrifying leaving your home like that. And I just hope this gets resolved soon. Yeah,
me too, of course.
All right. Well, thanks for the updates, Jen. I'll let you get back to that news and watching those unfortunately terribly violent videos that get posted on the website sometimes. But I guess that drives home just how bad things get sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. You never know what's going to come across our desk, Corey.
Oh, afraid not. All right. Well, thank you, Jen. And I'll just see you after the show.
Sounds great. Thank you, Corey.
All right. Now, as our reporter, Jen Hodgson, as she was pointing out, yes, Jonathan is working hard up in Edmonton, trying to cover the fire and other political goings on and things like that. So I'd like to remind everybody, the reason we stay independent, we do not take any tax dollars. We won't. And we stay independent. We rely on advertisers and subscribers. So if you've subscribed already, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, get on there to westernstandard.news/subscription. Take one out. It's only $10 a month, $100 a year if you take that bulk buy. It's like a newspaper subscription. You get past the paywall, and it helps us keep all of those reporters going and keep this show going and all the rest of the resources there. So, Get on it, guys. What are you waiting for? All right, let's bring our guest in. What are we waiting for there? I've been looking forward to this. I haven't. He came on a while back. He's known as the food professor. He's Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, and he's just been covering an issue that's really big. He's got quite a specialty, and it's really appreciated. So thank you for taking the time to come on to join us today, Dr. Charlebois.
My pleasure, Corey. I think the last time we chatted was probably a year ago or something. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, well, I think it was last January, not too long, but it's been too long, I guess, in some senses, especially as this keeps unfolding. I mean, it's surprising, this field, I guess you could say you are the specialist in it, has been in the news so much in this last year due to inflation, price increases, and people feeling pressured. So you've been keeping us up to date on the why and perhaps what we can do about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, things have changed dramatically since the last time we spoke. Food inflation is way down. It's at around 2.6%, which is really within the sweet spot we all want, 1.5 to 2.5%. I mean, inflation has been so demonized in the news or by politicians. You tend to feel that inflation is a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You do want some inflation. Problem is that inflation was actually quite high, and so we're down to what I would believe to be the sweet spot. And of course, that allows the food industry to do its job to provide us with high quality, safe foods. And on the other hand, it actually gives a chance to consumers to adapt their budget based on what's going on with the economy. Now, today we actually learned that the Bank of Canada was actually reducing its benchmark rate by 0.25 points. So now the benchmark is down to 4.5%. That Corey, that is really, in my view, the big problem when it comes to food affordability. People just had no money to spend at the grocery store, so they traded down. So this news today will give some relief to a whole lot of people out there carrying a mortgage, debt, people with kids, who are economically involved quite a bit. They've been suffering with these hikes in recent years. So today I think was good news for them.
Yeah, well, it's nice we could use some good news now and then. And food is unlike other consumer items. We can put off a vacation if times get tight, or we can get some off-brand clothing or put off some shopping. But I mean, food is a need. You can't avoid purchasing it. So if the price of food goes up, you're going to feel it no matter what you do. It's not like you can wait until the prices come down later on. So a lot of where the vitriol is in the politics, both right and wrong, I guess, have really gone after the grocers a lot. Maybe it's because it's front line. That's where people see the price increase. That's where most of it comes. Do you hear me at all?
I can hear you.
Oh,
Can
I've
you hear
got you.
me?
Thank you. Yes, I was just sending an email. Oh, how embarrassing! With tethering our phones, it's a challenge with live shows. I'm afraid our internet in the whole building has collapsed, but we're back
Uh,
up and streaming. I appreciate you waiting in there.
I was just waiting. We have some tornado warnings here in the east right now, and the weather is not great. So I actually thought it was us.
No, I'm afraid it's on our end, but as much as I'd prefer to be able to blame you for it. Uh,
Always blame Quebec. Always blame
yes,
Quebec.
that's right. That's my specialty. Well, maybe if I could, I'll keep you a few more minutes because I sent you an email as I tethered my phone, but I left off. I think the last question was about the grocery code of conduct. Maybe if you could explain why something like that would be needed and how it may help things.
Yeah, I know it's a hard sell for a lot of Canadians because they think it's really about government intervention. It's not really yet. So the code of conduct basically will give an opportunity to suppliers to actually have a voice, really. And when you actually understand, my field of expertise is food distribution, and I have to say, Corey, Loblaws and Walmart are just crushing the industry right now with their own rules, with extra fees. And let's say, for example, you have some new jam to sell to Loblaw, they'll charge you $100,000 for it. And if it's actually popular the next year, they'll actually double fees, and you're at the mercy of the oligopoly. So either say yes, you pay extra fees and you increase your own prices, and if you do that, of course, consumers get hit eventually, or you walk away from your most important customer. So those are the two choices that most suppliers have right now. The code of conduct will actually give a chance for suppliers to be heard before an arbitrator to settle disputes with banners, particularly Loblaws and Walmart. So in theory, academically, this actually could work to increase competition because it will actually give a chance to suppliers. And I know that there are a lot of them in Alberta really having a hard time with Loblaw and Walmart in particular. It gives them a chance for success, really, eventually. Now, will it work? We don't know. I mean, I think the easiest part to establish a code was to get all five of them on board. So Costco, Walmart, Loblaw, Sobeys, and Metro are all on board. But will there be compliance? I have no idea. If you actually send a fine to Walmart, will it pay the fine? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, typically, though, an industry association would be preferred than having government come in and legislate. I mean, this is, I guess, in a way, it's if this doesn't work, that's where the government's going to be tempted to come in and try and do that job.
Exactly. It avoids legislation, and you do not want government to get involved. You do not want government to get involved, or else it's going to be a disaster. So, and I think that's why Costco and Walmart signed on at the last minute, because they felt they had. I mean, it was the next step. Basically, Ottawa was game to go ahead with legislation, and so that's why they're signing on, and they're giving industry a chance to get things done and see if this can work.
So it's a delicate balance, though. I mean, having an oligopoly is always challenging. It's only a little bit better than a monopoly, but it's not as good as having a very diverse number of suppliers. But also, though, being a very large supplier does allow some of them to take advantage of economies of scale, and that's part of what keeps prices down. So, achieving the balance of allowing these large operators to kind of move large volumes and keep consumer products low versus swinging their weight around too hard because they're big is going to be difficult.
Economies of scales are absolutely critical to keep prices down. You're absolutely right, Corey. Well, when it comes to food, you also need variety to increase competition. And right now, let's face it, we got 5 companies selling the same stuff at different price. I mean, Canada has the 7th most consolidated food distribution industry in the world. In the world, okay? So we have a problem. And both Australia and the UK both recognize that problem. They're in the same boat as we are, and they actually did go ahead with a mandatory code of conduct. And when you look at some of the prices, it's not killing inflation. You don't want to kill inflation, but prices are much more stable. And guess what? Food processing is actually much more I would say, versatile. And I know that in Alberta in particular, where you are, the food processing industry is becoming more and more vibrant. And if you want to actually give them a chance, talk to any suppliers out there. They'll tell you it's a tough go. It's really tough to make it happen. They have to sell their stuff to the US or elsewhere to actually make it happen. They can't rely on the Canadian market. And so if you do that, independent grocers like Calgary Co-op, for example, or co-op stores, they're looking for variety. They're looking for different products you would find then at Walmart and Loblaw. And so with the code, I actually think you can actually give a chance to suppliers to develop different market instead of being at the mercy of the big ones.
Well, and that would be a good outcome, absolutely. I mean, the other outcome we want to see then is more variety of retailers, within an affordable level. Now, the federal government has talked about reaching out and trying to get others to move in, but unfortunately, I think they've sort of salted their own field because they've been so rough on the existing retailers who wants to move into this environment. But yeah, maybe if some of the vitriol can be cooled down and some of the pressure, maybe we can draw in some other retailers to help broaden that market a little.
Well, I mean, I think you raise a good point, Corey. I mean, that campaign to attract more retailers was a complete disaster. I mean, on the one side, you're calling for grocers to come to Canada and invest, while market conditions just discourage anyone to come to Canada. I mean, GDP per capita is down compared to the US. When you look at retail sales, food retail sales, Corey, are lower in constant dollars than in 2017 in Canada. Who would want to invest in Canada? Meanwhile, grocers like Save-On Foods and T&T are investing in the US. Canadian grocers are going to the US. Why? Because the US is more interesting. It's a more interesting market to invest. Ottawa's role is to make Canada an interesting place to invest. And I think the code will do that over time, not right away, but over time. So don't call for grocers. Just make sure you enable conditions to make Canada an interesting place to invest.
Well, yeah, it kind of comes back to that. If you build it, they will come. I mean, if it's a place where they can see some growth opportunities for them, some returns for their shareholders, I mean, business will go there. They'll naturally gravitate to it.
And don't forget, Corey, what's different between, say, the oil industry, pharmaceuticals, and the food industry is that food is all about high volume and extremely low margins, which makes the industry a little different than any other. So when I hear colleagues say, well, we need economy of scales, so what if we have an oligopoly? It's power to the strongest and the smartest. It's true. All that is true, and I agree. Capitalism is a great thing. But when it comes to food, the problem with food is that you got rural Canada being really hammered. A lot of towns in Alberta and elsewhere just don't have more than one grocer, and Canada is a unique place because of its topography. So you need to kind of be careful with how you support the industry overall. But I would say that, I mean, after the code of conduct, what you need to settle are interprovincial barriers. That are the worst, and that discourages any investments to come to Canada.
Well, that's a whole other show subject on its own.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
I've said that before. People are always talking about free trade with other countries. Well, we don't even have free trade within our provinces right now, which does make it difficult for any industry that spans provincial borders.
But a low-hanging fruit for you, Corey, for the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, we are taxing right now 4,600 different food products. Why the hell are we taxing food in Canada retail? I have no idea. And so that's a low-hanging fruit. You can overnight change all that and stop taxing food so people can have access to salads and sandwiches at the grocery store. Right now, because of shrinkflation, more and more food is being taxed because they are considered snacks due to a smaller size than before. So just changing that could actually make food more affordable in Canada. All that money is going to Ottawa. It's not going to businesses.
Yeah, so just you touched on that quickly because of the bizarre, well, welcome to tax codes and bureaucracy and rules. They've set their, some could say arbitrary or realistic. Okay, if it's over this size, it means it's a food item. If it's below this size, it must be a snack. Thus, it's eligible for taxes. The reality is, though, people are sometimes buying smaller commodities and maybe shopping more often just because they feel that, that's the way they can manage their budget rather than bulk buying. And yeah, they're getting punished for it. It's so many ways to make it better.
Exactly, and a lot of people don't know it. Like, so for example, if you buy granola bars and there's 6 granola bars in the box, that's not taxable. If you go down to 5, and most of them have gone down to 5, that's taxable. Your ice cream jar, if it's under 500 mil, it's taxable. It's the same product. It's ridiculous. All that money is going to Ottawa, not at Loblaw, not at the Lobby. It's going to Ottawa, but no politicians will want to talk about that.
No, and I hadn't thought about it myself. I appreciate you bringing it up. These are the
that's increasing the cost of food.
Yes, and then there's a lot of the political discussion which has been going on. We certainly don't have time to go into the carbon tax, but areas where Ottawa really could bring down some food prices to people if they backed off. But I mean, one of the quick responses a person will always give is, well, if Ottawa backed off, the grocers just won't drop the prices anyways, and they'll pocket the difference. But again, that comes down to if it's a competitive market, that won't happen.
Exactly. And the other thing, the reason why I think that argument is weak is that people don't know. They don't look at their receipts. When you actually go to a grocery store, you don't look at your receipt. So that tax is kind of hidden, but you still have to pay for it. So when you go home and you look at the bottom line, that total, you're going to blame Galen Weston. You're not going to blame Justin Trudeau.
No, and that's part of the problem when you're on the front line. I used to own a pub and a cafe, and it's another narrow margin food-related business. And you're the one who hears it from the consumer, though, when the price goes up, where they had to raise the price of my beer or my coffee or anything. It's just because you're the face that they deal with when they open their wallet. So that's where the retailers have kind of, to a degree, kind of unfairly gotten beaten on over this whole affair.
I would say so. Now, I think we're actually close to the end of this ridiculous campaign against grocers. I actually think, are they blameless? No. I mean, they've done some, well, let's face it, they've done some stupid things. And I'm thinking about the bread price fixing scandal, for example, and there are some rumors about other things. And frankly, corporate bonuses, $22 million. I don't know. Like, you may want to work on your PR. Loblaw trying to end their expiring food discount, for example, while food inflation was at 10%. I mean, they've done some ridiculous thing, and so they do deserve some criticism. But at the end of the day, food inflation is way more complicated than that. And what I find quite dishonest from some politicians is to point fingers at industry when in reality a lot of inflation is due to has been policy driven, really. And so you need to look in yourself in the mirror and see what else you can do to make food more affordable instead of blaming and getting CEOs to Ottawa and accusing them of making too much money.
Yeah, they certainly haven't done themselves any favors on the public front sometimes with their practice.
Their PR strategy has been a disaster for grocers. I mean, hasn't been good. I mean, you want to be careful when you, like, Loblaw's approach has always been, let's do it, don't tell anyone, people won't notice. Well, with social media, you can't get away with that anymore. I'm sorry.
No, well, and I appreciate you coming on and being out there on social media to break that down. As I said, I learned something new yet again. I hadn't really thought of that with the new taxes we're getting out of the shrinkflation. We got something breaking here. So,
I won't charge you tuition, Corey. Don't worry. It's all free.
Thanks. Typically, I'm a terrible student. So before I let you go, and I appreciate again your patience with the internet outage. We need more competition and providers there too, but that's a different.
Yes, bravo.
Where can people see your work and keep track of what's going on out there with this, Mr. Charlebois?
Yeah, absolutely. You can either, I mean, on social media, we're pretty active. We have our own account, the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. You can follow me at the Food Professor on X and on LinkedIn, and we also, of course, have our own website on the Dalhousie University website. Just Google Agri-Food Analytics Lab Dalhousie University, and you'll find all of our research, and our research is free, of course, in both English and French.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And it was good to have some good news too, with the price rises getting into a manageable position where they should be right now, and with the grocers code of conduct hopefully stabilizing things further. So thank you again for coming on. I hope we can have you on again soon.
Before I forget, my thoughts are with the people of Jasper. I know it's been tough over the last few days, so all the best to them.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we're all hoping for the best out there. Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Talk again soon. So again, he's always great when he comes on. He's on radio all the time, very prolific, and shares such fantastic information with us. So again, it's Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, and he's known as the Food Professor, and really, gets to the root of things on an important issue. We all got to buy food. There's no getting away from that one. All right, well, let's get on to our business and energy fella here in the studio. There shouldn't be any technical issues. I don't have far between you and myself. Sean Pulser, how's it going?
It's going well, thank you.
Good. So you just came in from a presser, did you?
Yeah, Calgary's got its first EV fire truck.
Well, being a fire truck, I just hope it doesn't fail. I mean, it's just so important.
Well, this one is so basically it's a testing program for the manufacturer, and they're trying to get some data to inform real world conditions. So that would be like -40. So there's no upfront cost to taxpayers on it, and it's just they're going to gather some data and they're going to share it. It's a 5-year thing. They kind of get a loaner.
Well, don't get your back up if you're getting a free one for the time being.
Well, and if it stalls, I mean,
as long as you have a good truck behind it to deal with it, if it doesn't.
Well, it's got diesel backup, but
okay.
It just kind of struck me that consumers don't get this opportunity to, try before you buy.
No, well, Edmonton tried electric buses. How'd that all go?
That was a disaster. Yeah. And Toronto did electric ambulances, and that was a disaster. Vancouver paid straight up front for theirs, and I don't know if it's been a disaster, but I don't think it's really done them much of anything, to be honest. But
well, that's the rush with those. What else is going on in our business world out there?
Well, we had an interesting story yesterday about Harley Davidson. So I don't know if you know this fellow Robbie Starbuck. He's been going around. He targeted Tractor Supply and John Deere. And
he's been nailing all those DEI
people. You like Home Depot. Anyway, so now he's going after Harley Davidson, of all people, and there's a very extreme long laundry list of violations.
Well, it's just, I mean, we can see it in a trendy industry fashion, or as we said, Starbucks or whatever, but I can't believe the board's thinking with, when you look at the client base, okay, bikers, farmers, exactly. Bud Light drinkers. Well, what's the matter with you fools? They don't want to look at a bunch of, woke crap.
Well, and it's not what their customers want. And that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying he's not attacking anybody. What he wants to do is force these companies to be basically accountable to the people that are spending their money, right? And if they don't like it and they don't buy it, then it's so much the worse for them.
Oh, it's up to the consumers, that's for sure. But now that Mr. Starbucks exposing it, then I suspect Harley might be reevaluating some of their considerations.
It would probably make sense for them. I don't know how the HA are going to handle those.
No, I just can't see a drag queen Hell's Angel. But you never know. The world is changing. But I think we'll let the organizations choose that for themselves rather than Harley Davidson trying to push it down from above.
And one other story that we're following here is about 10% of Alberta's oil production is wildfires. They're within about 10 kilometers of about 10% of Alberta's oil production. So we're talking about 450,000 barrels a day potentially that could be offline. Companies have been evacuating non-essential personnel, but to this point, they haven't really had to shut in anything.
Well, that's good. Yeah, the facilities, and people realize too, if they haven't been up north, typically there's going to be some pretty good buffer areas around the lease sites. The pipelines are buried. The risers have, some stuff spread out so that the fire doesn't necessarily impact them as people would think it would.
Absolutely. So the last major one was in 2016 when basically Fort McMurray burned to the ground. So Suncor had to file a disclosure report last year that said if there was a repeat and they had to shut down its main mine, it would cost probably on the order of about $56 million a day.
Whew, that's some big money, and that's just one outfit.
That's just one, yeah.
Right. We got anything else while I got you, or you're?
I think that's about all I can really think of off the top of my head. I just wanted to thank you for all the Ammonite. Corey likes rocks and stones, and I do too. And
yeah, hey, I don't give it free to everybody out there, but I had some excess, and somebody else who loves Alberta's official gemstone, Ammonite.
Alberta's official gemstone comes from the Bear Paw Formation, which was the fracking formation that they get the oil and gas from.
Yeah,
near St. Mary's River. And it's beautiful stuff. And I just want to say thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. Hoping to work some good stones out of it.
Thank you.
All right. That is our business and energy writer, Sean Polzer, covering all that stuff, local and afar. You know, it brings to mind, funny, when we think of Harley and we think of woke, I used to own that pub in Pritis, and you get a diverse crowd of clientele. And down the road from Pritis is the Azza Ridge Hotel, which is a very, very high-end hotel that used to have actually a butler school. And there were butlers who would come. They couldn't drink after work at the hotel. They'd come to our pub to have a drink and some chicken wings or whatever else. And I just remember, because we used to get a really mixed crowd of people. And I got a lot of bikers there. I mean, we're in an area just out in the foothills. We get some big, scary looking bikers in their Harleys. They're usually great, good customers, and they'd sit out. But one day on the patio, there were all of our big burly bikers out there. And here was a couple of the butlers from Azza Ridge. Just something else to be said is most of the butlers tended to be gay. That's just the way it was. And one of them was a fantastic young man and very, very flamboyant. And they were all having beer, bikers and these butlers on the patio together, having a good time, laughing, drinking, doing shooters. It was just a surreal scene you wouldn't expect to see now and then. Very different cultures, just having a good time together. I thought it was fantastic, actually. So, you never know, don't make assumptions with people. There's more tolerance out there than others realize. They were just a bunch of people from different worlds having a drink together and having a good time. But at the same time, if you are Harley Davidson, you got to remember the bulk of your clientele aren't interested in woke stuff. Come on. I mean, look at the picture there on it. Yes, it's this is bikers. It's just not their thing. But this DEI, and people have pointed out, the ones who are going, it gets into how woke and foolish our post-secondary is getting. And that's why we're seeing it in the oil field. That's why we're seeing it in Harley Davidson. That's why we saw it with Bud Light. The ones who went through the school with the woke professors and the fools and so on, indoctrinated with all that crap, graduated, managed to move up the corporate scrotum pole and get themselves into those positions of marketing and communications and so on with these major companies. And they don't really know what the hell they're talking about. They're from a cloistered world. They didn't come up through the ranks of reality on who they're marketing to and what they're doing. And they feel that their junk marketing that they were taught will apply to the products they're selling. And they're learning very much the hard way right now that no, it doesn't work. We've seen that with other funds and retirement things and so on. The bottom line when it comes to a company, there's only one role. One. Make money. That's it. Make a profit for your investors. That's their role. It doesn't mean you have to be a bad citizen. It doesn't mean you have to be cutthroat. It doesn't mean you have to be nasty. In fact, lots of companies market themselves just on being generally good citizens, but still focus on making money because that's what they're supposed to do. We're into this stupid world. It really is. Where companies are expected to apologize for making profits when they're pulled to the carpet for having made money. That gets back to what Dr. Charlebois was talking about. They actually pulled the grocers in to explain themselves because they made, get this, 4% profit. And they got pulled in front of a parliamentary committee and treated like garbage because they made 4%. If anything, they should be pulled before the investors saying, why didn't you make more? That's their job. Their job isn't to take part in woke things. Their job isn't to facilitate social engineering. It isn't to change public hearts and minds on social issues. Doesn't mean you can't take part in charities and things like that and everything else. But in the end of it all, The job is to make money for your shareholders and never apologize for it. So these clowns in these DEI departments, I mean, it was beautiful to see Microsoft got rid of the entire department of these DEI, and that's diversity, equity, inclusion, because they realized this is stupid. We're burning money. It's garbage. It's not doing us any favors. So they got rid of it. Somebody, you know, the buck eventually does stop because you just can't pay these clowns forever. Twitter, X, you know, when Musk bought it, he did fantastic in that he just laid off, 75% of the staff. Most of them were in that sort of crap category. The garbage had built like a pipe that hasn't been snaked in too long, and it needed to be flushed out. You know, these hires that aren't actually doing anything functional, they just fit trying to push for these ridiculous categories and ideas and notions. So that's good news story, seeing that, you know, Starbucks going after and exposing these companies, and then leave it to them, leave it to the customers, leave it to the shareholders to decide what they want to do. But in the end, the saying of go woke, go broke tends to apply, and a lot of companies are finally starting to learn it. So let's see, you know, Wild Rose saying not profits, excessive profit while food banks are overwhelmed. Well, Wild Rose, 4% isn't excessive profit. It's not even close. Food banks are overwhelmed. That's a whole separate issue. That's a whole separate issue altogether, but has nothing to do with the grocers. Nothing. They can't go lower. That's the reality. Either way, thank you all for tuning in and hanging in there through that little bit of a hiccup we had with our streaming service. We really appreciate it. Make sure, again, guys, westernstandard.news/subscription to get on there, get the stuff as it's breaking, get past the paywall, and help support us and our reporters to keep things rolling. Tune into the Pipeline tonight. It'll be on with a whole bunch more issues for us to break down, and come back next week. We'll have our internet backups up and we'll do another full show all over again. And I appreciate you all. So see you all then. And hey, let's all pull for Jasper, guys. Thanks.